Hello, and welcome to Accelerate and Secure Your AWS Cloud Journey. Today's Partner EcoCast is sponsored by Rubrik, Amazon Web Services, and Presidio, and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I will be your moderator for this Partner EcoCast. So before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we will provide further technical assistance. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to 3 PDFs. They're from our sponsors, from Rubrik, AWS, and Presidio. I encourage you to access those resources now, and you can also grab them at any time during the presentation and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can also be found in your handout section. Just scroll down to the bottom there, and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters, and we've got a great panel today, so take advantage of that. And so to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event is over, we'll look through all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. So with all that said, let's get to today's fantastic discussion. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Tom Harwood, who's Principal Storage Specialist with AWS. We have Stacy Strausberg, Senior Sales Engineer with Rubrik, and Mike Campbell, Principal Architect with Presidio. So welcome, everybody.
Thanks, Scott. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And as we get started, we've got a poll here for the audience just to take everyone's temperature to make sure we're tailoring the discussion to where everyone is. So while we're kind of going through everybody's experience here in a second, if you could go ahead and respond to this question about where your organization falls on the cloud spectrum, that'd be great. So while we hear from the audience on that, let's get to know our panelists a little bit. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day at AWS?
Well, I'm a storage specialist focusing primarily on our backup and ransomware partners like Rubrik, helping customers leverage the cloud to reduce the overall complexity and cost of their data protection environment. That's my focus.
All right, awesome. And Stacy, what keeps you busy at Rubrik?
Oh boy, I get to support mostly Oregon with a little bit of Southwest Washington, and with great customers and prospects, and spend my time keeping people out of trouble in their cyber vulnerabilities is really where I spend my time.
That's a great thing to spend your time on, keeping people out of trouble. I like that. Mike, tell us a little bit about Presidio and what you do there.
Great. So I'm Mike Campbell. I'm a principal architect. Been with Presidio 10 years now, and all day, every day, I'm talking with clients and customers about data center and cloud solutions and technologies. So to Presidio, that not only includes the infrastructure, the storage, the compute, the network aspects, but it's also, business continuity conversations, it's disaster recovery conversations, data protection, and hybrid cloud. Those are topics I get excited about, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Excellent. Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thanks. And looks like we've got a lot of responses in here. So nobody has no experience with the cloud, if that's a confusing way to say that, but I think that's a good thing for the purposes of our discussion here. We've got about 47%, almost half, who are in the cloud but have a lot to figure out. 35% are beginning the journey, and 17% mature with dedicated cloud-only data centers. So I guess I'll just throw that open to the group. Is that what sort of you were expecting to hear, or what are you guys seeing out there?
That's right, a typical mix that I speak to. It's a good representation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We're seeing a lot of clients have begun that journey, so I would kind of expect these results, and it allows us to kind of not go into the total 101, but to skip into 201 and above.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Appreciate everybody answering that question, so we do know how to tailor things that really helps us out. Well, with that said, Tom, I'm going to turn things over to you to get us started.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, so hello again. I'm Tom Harwood. I'm a principal storage specialist at Amazon, focusing on our S3 storage. So the agenda for this session is briefly to look into some of the challenges that customers are facing with traditional backup strategies, what we're seeing customers adopt as a means to address those challenges, and how Amazon and Rubrik together can better protect your data. Let's go ahead and take a look at data protection and see what customers are telling us they're facing. So enormous growth in digital content, broad adoption of AI and data analytics, additional regulatory reporting requirements, and the emergence of the Internet of Things are all driving explosive data growth. In 2018, data was estimated to be at 33 zettabytes. To put that into perspective, 1 zettabyte is equivalent to 1 trillion gigabytes. So IDC expects the number to grow to about 5.3 of that, to 175 zettabytes by 2025. Now, that is a lot of data. So customers are looking for a simple and cost-effective way to protect their data at scale. Hang on a second, my screen's messed up here. Apologies. There we go, back to the normal size. Okay, so anyway, by designing and deploying data protection solutions that can keep up with demand, it's really become a very complicated task. So first, let's take a look at some of the traditional backups. If you have backup servers or appliances that manage and backup the catalogs of your applications, these backup servers typically have disk-based storage to help you quickly restore, but you may also use other storage media such as tape for long-term retention. Some of you also store copies of offsite for compliance using a third-party data bunker service, which typically requires shipping that data to an offsite location. So in this traditional scenario, due to just the overall growth, there's simply too much data for you to back up and securely restore. Next, the process is vulnerable. Backups need to be secured from modern cyber attacks and unauthorized deletions. Additionally, the whole mechanism is fragile. Your data durability, availability, and recoverability, do you have that across sites? Also, cost is a big factor, especially in these economic times. It's very expensive as you try to raise the levels of durability and availability, manage multiple replicas, and have to provision additional hardware to support it all. And finally, the whole strategy is just too complicated with procurement, installation, and management, including the daily monitoring, patching, and updating software and hardware, sometimes beyond its serviceable life. There's a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting that needs to be done, and customers are telling us that it doesn't help them solve the problems that add value to their customers. So there are lots of challenges to traditional data networks. Bear with me a second here. struggling with the slides again. So there's lots of challenges to traditional data protection approaches and modern capabilities such as instant data recovery, the ability to support cyber resiliency, and they're all now essential, right? So as a result, we're seeing customers adopt the cloud as a more effective approach than on-premises solution and as a means to combat the latest cybersecurity threats to their data. So there are several benefits to moving your backups to the cloud that can be realized immediately. These include the ability to leverage existing investments. Rubrik supports Amazon S3 as a storage target, which enables customers to leverage the benefits of cloud through their existing workflows. This is one of the reasons that backups are one of the first workloads that customers migrate to the cloud. You get the benefits of a cost-effective offsite storage platform, which provides physical separation from your primary or on-premises data, with this pay-as-you-go economics and no upfront fees or capital investments and near zero overhead to manage. If you're backing up tape today, we can help you eliminate that infrastructure complexity and expense, including the cost and overhead associated with third-party tape vaulting services. And if you're storing your backup data in the AWS cloud, you have the ability to repurpose that data for performing analytics or providing copies to test dev teams that can spin up resources on demand to run tests or develop products. Your data is no longer just sitting there idle. You can now leverage that data for competitive advantage. So there are multiple ways to connect with AWS. You can either integrate natively with AWS storage services such as S3, or by leveraging APIs. I wanted to quickly mention the bottom bar there, the S3's 7 different storage classes, as they provide a wide range of options. So S3 storage classes are purpose-built to provide the lowest cost storage for different workloads so that you can have the right data on the right tier at the right time. So when deciding which S3 class to use, you'll want to consider the access patterns and retention times of your data to optimize the lowest total cost over the lifetime of that data. And for data with changing, unknown, or unpredictable access patterns, you can use the S3 intelligent tiering, which is designed to optimize storage costs by automatically moving data to the most cost-effective access tier when access patterns change. This takes all of the guesswork out of the equation. So this is how customers implement a modern hybrid infrastructure using their on-prem environment and AWS. Customers often look at migrating backup and archive data because they can enjoy the advantages of scalable, low-cost cloud storage with a simple migration. Moving to the cloud enables you to reduce the significant costs in securing, storing, and managing the data that currently resides in those on-premise arrays. Customers can use our tape gateway to store virtual tapes in Amazon S3 and create new ones automatically using the existing Rubrik workflows to simplify and centralize management. If desired, customers can also continue using their existing investments in their on-prem infrastructure and use AWS to elastically scale their storage as needed. So it doesn't necessarily require a forklift upgrade. You just use it when and as you need. So let's take a look at tape, since it typically houses the majority of customers' backup data. The most compelling advantage of tape is the low media cost of cartridges. The second advantage of tape is it's what people know. It's what they've always done, and it's comfortable. But when doing a total cost of ownership analysis, both CapEx and OpEx costs need to be included. You'll want to consider things like hardware, maintenance, and support costs, media refreshes for equipment and the associated migrations, which are typically every 3 years, labor costs of backup administrators, including the time and effort to retrieve tape from offline sources, and contracts for offsite vaulting services. It's also important to consider elements such as the opportunity costs associated with staff doing a lot of busy work and just struggling to meet recovery time objectives. AWS makes it easy to move your backup data that resides on tape into the cloud, and that's through the tape gateway service that can be configured to act as a virtual tape library that connects your on-premise environment to your Amazon S3 and Glacier. Leveraging the tape gateway, Rubrik can write to virtual tapes stored in the on-premise virtual tape library, where they're asynchronously backed up to Amazon S3. When you no longer require quick or frequent access to data contained on a virtual tape, Rubrik can archive it from the virtual tape library into Amazon Glacier to further reduce costs. So Amazon S3 and Glacier deliver a substantially different consumption cost model, where costs are, again, pay-as-you-go, variable monthly charges based on usage. So when considering the broader cost of on-premises tape solutions against the cost and agility benefits of cloud-based storage, it's definitely every time to rethink backing up to on-premises tape. So now I've mentioned Amazon S3 several times, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that. S3 is object storage built to store and retrieve any amount of data from anywhere. For those of you wondering what object storage is a technology that stores and manages data in an unstructured format called objects. So instead of putting files into a folder for a hierarchical layout, as file systems do, objects reside in a flat structure called a bucket. The majority or the major benefits of object storage are its virtually unlimited scalability and the lower cost of storing large volumes of data, both of which are key considerations for data protection. In the beginning, I mentioned that minimizing data loss is a key consideration for data protection. So Amazon S3 is designed to provide 11 nines of data durability. So for example, if you store 10 million objects within Amazon S3, you can on average expect to incur a loss of a single object once every 10,000 years. In a geographic area. Regions consist of multiple availability zones, or as we call them, AZs. Each AZ contains one or more discrete data centers, each with independent power, cooling, and networking. And AZs are interconnected via redundant ultra-low latency networks. A bit of trivia here, AWS has more regions with 3 or more availability zones for high availability than any other cloud provider. And by the way, this infrastructure is common to most AWS services. S3, however, utilizes this architecture to the full extent by redundantly storing data across multiple failure domains. So let me try to graphically depict this for you. You upload a file to S3. S3 then redundantly stores your objects for multiple devices across a minimum of 3 availability zones in a region before returning success. S3 then uses a combination of checksums, secure hash algorithms, and cyclic redundancy checks, or CRCs, to verify data integrity. S3 performs these checksums on data at rest and repairs any disparity using redundant data. In fact, S3 performs about 4 billion checksum computations per second to ensure data integrity. So finally, let's take a look at how Amazon and Rubrik together can better protect your data. In traditional environments, you need to be concerned with physical access to the storage, the media itself, the corruption of the media. These topics are less relevant in the public cloud storage world. What is still relevant is the human side of things. So what if deletions are accidental, like in the case of human error, or malicious activity in the case of ransomware cyber attacks? S3 has no way of knowing the intent of a deletion request and must honor those requests if they're properly authorized. And of course, we also need to be prepared for any unknown challenges. Things are going to happen, so we need to be prepared to recover data when necessary. So 2022 was a breakout year for ransomware as a cybersecurity attack vector wreaked havoc on individuals, organizations around the world. It's a trend continuing into 2023 and only seems to be increasing in frequency and severity, with ransomware attacks really affecting just about every vertical, some more than others. All are at risk. Particularly hard hit have been government organizations. Look at Ukraine, or even the U.S. Marshal Service just got hit a few weeks ago. So it turns out that really trying to address ransomware requires a multidisciplinary approach involving not just storage, but governance, networking, security, and event management, real-time monitoring, analytics, machine learning, disaster recovery, and processes. Attackers look for weaknesses in systems, and there are some fairly simple steps that can be taken to make information more secure. Things like updating passwords and regularly updating software. A good example of this is the nearly 2-year-old vulnerability to VMware ESXi servers, which was responsible for February's wave of attack of over 3,200 servers globally. After 2 years, it's estimated that there's still 20,000 servers exposed to this vulnerability. People just aren't patching their systems. Social engineering is another tack being taken. Things like phishing emails, we've all seen them. And while some things can be addressed with technology, again, it's the human weaknesses that can be exploited and are nearly impossible to remedy. So our customers need to be prepared to respond when an attack occurs. And it's not if, but when an attack occurs. Since it's a multifaceted problem, preparing for a ransomware attack requires a multidisciplinary approach. Fortunately, there are several frameworks already built to provide guidelines and best practices to manage all cybersecurity risks. We've been using the NIST cybersecurity framework as a definition to help strengthen our ransomware readiness. The 5 functions of the framework are: identify what you need to protect the assets that you've identified, implement detection measures to identify threats, have a response plan ready, and be prepared to recover if necessary. So other countries have similar but different standards, like the EU-based framework, for instance. So if you're outside the US, I encourage you to look up your country's specific framework for specific geographic requirements. So AWS offers a full suite of security features that you can use to strengthen your security posture and make sure that your data is secured against bad actors, whether they're external or internal to the organization. This diagram shows your data as the center with multiple layers of data protection options surrounding it. We start with identity and access management, or IAM policies, which can be used to securely control access to the data by analyzing, detecting, and restricting overly permissive accounts to least privilege. This should be the first step in any data protection strategy. Next, we have the S3 version, which protects against accidental deletion of data. If an object is deleted, you just grab the previous version. Then we have the key to guarding against ransomware, which is data immutability. Using S3 Object Lock, this protects data against any modification or deletion and is worth probably digging into a little bit more. Let's take a look at that. So S3 Object Lock API has become the de facto standard for immutable storage. With Object Lock, you can store objects using a write once, read many worm model. You can use it to add a layer of protection against object changes and deletions, particularly against ransomware attacks or other malicious activity. Object Lock can also help you meet regulatory requirements. So there are 2 modes to retention: governance and compliance. Both require you to specify a retention period from 1 day to 99 years. In governance mode, users can't overwrite or delete an object or alter its lock settings unless they have special permission. In compliance mode, a protected object can't be overwritten or deleted by any user, including the root user in the AWS account. The object's retention mode cannot be changed, and retention period cannot be shortened. You can also implement a legal hold. And that's going to also prevent it from being overwritten or deleted. So everything that we've talked about so far kind of relates to objects that are existing or new objects in a bucket. So for existing objects, we want to be able to use the S3 batch operations to manage object lock for billions of existing objects in a single batch. So if you do migrate data into S3, we can make sure that those have object locks and that they're securely protected. So let's go back to our model here. S3 replication can be used to protect against regional outages to meet compliance requirements. We've got S3 storage lens, which provides an interactive dashboard into data protection settings and risk levels. And then finally, we have third-party storage partners such as Rubrik, which enable point-in-time restore of customers' data and recovery from ransomware. So, as I mentioned, protecting and recovering from ransomware attack requires a multifaceted strategy, and there are many AWS services and AWS partner offerings that align to industry frameworks and can be employed to mitigate the risk of ransomware. For the purposes of our discussion today, this slide represents just a small subset of AWS services which can help you towards a state of cybersecurity. First, AWS Config provides a detailed view of configuration of AWS resources and your account. This includes how those resources are related to one another and how they were configured in the past so that you can actually see how the configurations and relationships change over time. Amazon Macie helps you manage the security posture of your S3 data state by providing an inventory of S3 buckets and automatically evaluating and monitoring the buckets for security and access control. GuardDuty is a threat detection service that continuously monitors AWS accounts and workloads for malicious activity and delivers detailed security findings for visibility and remediation. With the malware protection enabled, whenever GuardDuty detects suspicious behavior, it automatically initiates a scan to detect the presence of malware. And of course, we've got Rubrik, which supplements S3 data protection with its suite of data observability and remediation offerings. So hopefully you found this useful. If you were to walk away with anything from this session, I'd like it to be that modernizing your data protection strategy by backing up to AWS with Rubrik will provide you a better data protection service at a lower cost than what you're paying today. And while no one can address all the risks that your data is exposed to, we can help you significantly minimize that risk and provide you with the ability to safely recover your data if needed. So with that, Stacy, I think I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Tom, for allowing me to present today. I'm here to show you why Rubrik and AWS with Presidio are a great team to support your AWS cloud journey. Rubrik and AWS are come together to give you the best solution with great immutability. We are a zero trust protection, which allows for you to know that all of your native backups will be immutable with snapshots with EC2, EBS, RDS, etc. Now with cloud migration, we are here to help you with your dev test. We have the ability to take copies of your on-prem, bring it up into AWS, and then help with that conversion. For long-term retention, maybe you've got 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or eternity. We have that ability to tier down to the least storage cost possible. And then ultimately, this is a heterogeneous replication. We can replicate copies, as I mentioned, from on-prem into the cloud to help for migration into AWS. We also can go from region to region or zone to zone. Depending on what your needs are, we can architect based on those. Now, protection in the cloud is a shared responsibility. AWS will make sure that your fundamental services and your global infrastructure are all protected, but it is your responsibility to protect the data, the applications, and the platforms. So what are the benefits of Rubrik? Well, first of all, we talk about an SLA policy engine. And with that, we're going to define how often you want to take a snapshot or a backup and how long you want to keep it. We'll also be able to work with your redo logs, transactional logs in RDS. Now, we're also talking about file level recovery. So you don't have to recover an entire volume. We can go all the way down to a single file or a set of files. It's what your needs are. Now, as mentioned, we'll be able to do an instant replication into any location you want us to do. Do you want to be within the same availability zone, or do you want to be in another? Do you want to be in the same region or another? These are just a few clicks of the mouse for you to set up. And lastly, unified data protection. Simplify, make things easy. One solution for on your on-prem, your edge, your cloud environments. This is quick. We're talking about just a few setup steps for you, and you will have automatic protection. Don't forget, that also means instant restores. We are an API-based solution, which means under the hood, we can orchestrate pretty much anything that you need. Now, we work side by side with AWS. We're using the same APIs, but with that, we're also giving you the ability to go between zones, go between regions, and be able to handle any of the RBAC that you need. Now, I mentioned this before, but it's so important to talk about. Granular protection is at the DIS level or the AMI level. Again, let's make this as simple as possible and give you the speed of recovery. Now in RDS, it's nice to know that we can actually also keep the logs and try and work with you with the logs. Now with the logs, that means that I'm talking point of second for restores. And I'll show you that in the demo. So not only will we take a snap of the infrastructure, the instance, we're also going to be able to work with the RDS logs, the transaction logs, and again, give you that point in time. With Rubrik and AWS, you're looking at a streamlined setup. As mentioned, couple minutes, you're up and running. We will populate all of your instances, and you will then be able to choose what is the protection level. We will base everything on least privilege. We are a security-based company. We believe the least privilege that you have to give out, the better protection that you will be. And don't forget, no username passwords. These are short-lived tokens to protect you. And lastly, no cumbersome upgrades or updates, all handled in the background for you. Pretty nifty, wouldn't you say? Now, all of this is great, but let's actually go look into the demo. So here is Rubrik. And over here, what you're going to see is the actual global dashboard. This dashboard will give you all of the ability to see everything you have, both your cloud, your SaaS, and even all of your on-premise data center. I'll be able to see with a graphical view of all my data centers across the world. And over here, if I'm doing any ransom searching, and remember, we search through the backups, not through the production. So we can be in a stealth mode. We'll be able to see if there's any anomalies. And then for sensitive data, we all live under some kind of acronyms. Let that be HIPAA, PII, GDPR. We're going to be able to look through the data and be able to see if there is any sensitive data, let's say social security numbers, credit card numbers. So when and if you are hit in a ransom scenario, you'll know exactly what your blast radius is. Now let's move over specifically to AWS. And I'm going to go into my inventory. And what you're going to see is that I have the ability to see all my on-prem data over here. And then down here, look at, there's my AWS. So here's my EC2 instances, and I can set up any protection. I can add any accounts that I need to right from here. And by the way, we're going to read all the tag rules so we can make policies against that also. Now, also as in my inventory, you'll see that there was also an RDS. So again, same thing. Once we have the privileges, we will be able to see all of the RDS databases and be able to manage them there. Now let's talk policies. How do we get the backups handled? So the first thing we do is we create an SLA. Now our SLA is think policy. I can create it based on any object type. In this case, let's start with AWS EC2. Now, very simple. Let's tell it that every 12 hours, we are going to want to back up and unsnap, and then we're going to keep that for 30 days. And maybe every month, and we'll keep that for 12. And hey, let's go with every 7 years. And pardon me, let's go with every year, and we're going to do it for 7 years. Notice I don't have to do a backup window. Let the intelligence within the product, the machine learning, understand what is the optimal time to do an every 12-hour snap. Now I can archive. So again, I can take the off of your more expensive tiering, and I can bring it down to the least expensive tiering, whatever is needed. Next, I can also do replication. So if you want me to replicate between zones, I can do that. All I have to do, what region and what zone I go to, and I'll have that all set up also. Once I've done that, I'm going to give it a name, maybe a description, and I'm going to click create. That's how simple a policy is. And just so you can see the same thing, let's actually create a policy for RDS so you can see how easy it is to add the translates. So again, let's do it for this time, maybe every 8 hours, and we'll keep it for 32 days. That's 1 day, that's 1 extra day of a month. And if we still follow that same policy, we'll keep 1 year of monthlies, and we'll keep 1 year, and this time might be 5 years. Next, remember that replication. I can replicate if I choose to. And in this case, this is where my RDS transaction logs will be. Maybe you like to keep your trans logs for 7 days. Just put in the amount of days and it will be done for you, automated. Once we do that, we give it a name, we give it a description, and we create it. So now what we've done is I've shown you how we created the SLAs. Let's go back into our inventory and let's take a look at our 2 workloads. So here's the RDS, pardon me, here's the AWS EC2. Remember, we have the accounts. Now, if you've got tags going on out there, we can work with those tags and create a policy that would take the SLA domain that we want to attach to that workload and do it based on tags. Gives you the ability to know that any new workloads that come in will automatically, if they're tagged, will automatically be protected. I have my instances here, and here are my volumes. Now, you know we've done a backup because we set them automatically. So when we go in to look at any of the workloads, notice the green dots. That means that I've got a backup on that day. All I have to do is hit recover, and I can go to a restore, which is going to be in place, an export, which is going to be exported outside of the traditional restore location, or I can do files. On the files, I can do just any file name, and I'm going to pull up not just one file, but all the files, and you'll see by the different dates or times. Once I've had the file that I want, I can click 1 or 2. I can click next. Notice it says source, so that would be the original location. Or I can maybe have it in a less expensive area for archive. Click next, give it a bucket, click recover. I've now just recovered files. I can do the same exact thing when I look at my inventory and I look at my RDS. So down here where it says RDS, I can do the same thing. I can look at my file. Again, notice the difference though. You see that green line? What that's telling you is that I have point in time to the second. So when I click on here and I go to do a restore, it's going to ask me what I want to do, and just walk right through it. Give it the VPC and hit export. Now, one thing to notice is I was at 12 a.m. I could have been at 6 a.m. or I could have been even just by the second. So anywhere I want to do a point in time, again, I just hit recover and walk right through. So if you think about it, we've already set up our policies. We've actually done a restore in AWS with your EC2 and your RDS. The last thing I want to talk about too is reports, because reporting can be very important. So if I take my AWS EC2, notice I can see all of my protection, what's been protected, what doesn't have an SLA or a policy on it, and I can give this directly to my compliance team to show them what is happening. So through our demo, we've walked through one global dashboard that gives you everything within your environment, including looking at your anomalies or your sensitive data. We then walk through our inventory, and in this case, we talked about AWS with our EC2, and I showed you where we could actually add subscriptions, set up policies through our SLAs, and we do that with AWS, EC2, and RDS. And lastly, we walk through reports. Went through a lot pretty short in a short time, but look at the power. I have now file recovery, database recovery, point in time. That's pretty amazing. And it's so great to work with AWS and Presidio in your account and making sure you're safe. Thanks for the time, and I'll hand it right back to you.
So now we're going to jump right into an overview of Presidio, how Presidio partners with AWS and Rubrik to solve some challenging problems. And kind of an overarching theme for this conversation that we're about to enter into is why you should expect more from your solutions provider, from your partner. I'm going to kind of revisit that on a few of the slides and just make some, kind of humble challenges to the audience there on how you should think about your partner and how you should engage with them. So for those of you that are not aware of Presidio, as of now, we're a $6 billion organization, international organization, I should say. And in the bottom left there, you'll see, some of our focal areas. I'll call out a couple things. Data center and cloud in the orange segment there, and security. Those are just growing tremendously for us. And specifically within that, our digital business, which includes our cloud services. Those are conversations we're having all the time, and really things our customers are asking us and challenging us to bring to the table. Another aspect of this slide I like to focus on. So as a principal architect, I fall under the engineering side of the house at Presidio. So if you look to the right under our scale column, you'll see 7-to-1 engineer to account manager ratio. So, again, I fall under the engineering. So there are 7 of us for every direct seller. So I think what you get from that is a consultative engineering approach. Where the customer brings tough problems to us, we're responding back with technical recommendations and solving solutions and services to mapping those to solve that problem, and not necessarily in a salesy way, which I think is a differentiator. Okay, why Presidio? This is a differentiator slide, I think. And, again, I've been here 10 years at Presidio. I'd say my first 3 years, if you're looking at that arrow on the right, I spent the majority of my time talking to clients and customers at the bottom of that arrow, talking about, server refreshes, network designs, storage refreshes, storage optimizations. And there were really tactical conversations. They were great conversations. They were in the weeds. They were around speeds and feeds, things like, IOPS per disk group, volume alignment for performance, failure domains within compute environments. Those are great and still relevant. But I'd say, sometime around 7-8 years ago, the conversation started to change a little bit, and the clients started asking me and my peers to bring more to the table, right? And to talk more about business outcomes and strategies, and really bleeding into that top part of the arrow there, to talk more about their applications, to talk more about automation, to talk more about consumption models. And I've only seen momentum gain in those conversations. And I don't think that's going to slow down at all. That's going one direction. So Presidio, around 7 years ago, had to remain relevant in those conversations. So there's a couple different ways to do it. One, you need to retool within your organization, which we did. And our clients are doing the same things. You have to stay up to date with technologies. You have to constantly be learning. Being certified on the latest strategies and technologies. So we're doing that. We also decided to grow through acquisition. So we made a couple strategic acquisitions. One of them I'll call out was a company called Coda, C-O-D-A, that was a strategic partner of AWS at the time when we acquired them. And what that really did was bring over 300 plus cloud native engineers into Presidio. So while we're retooling, we essentially, prime the pump there with some really cloud native engineers that brought a different talk track and a different set of skills to the organization, and really filled the gap there. So we're have the traditional IT at the bottom. We're bringing in the cloud native expertise as well, and really that's where I see the customers are asking for help. So my humble challenge there is, if you to the attendees, if you have a partner that's maybe staying in that bottom section, and maybe you have another one that's in the top section, or maybe you have a partner that's just fulfillment, just it's acting simply in a transactional nature. I'd just say there's a better way. There's a more consultative way to engage with your partners. And I'd say, the clients that gain the most from interacting with Presidio that I see meet with us on a regular basis. My clients that meet with us on a weekly cadence and are bringing the toughest problems to us are the ones that derive the greatest value from Presidio. So I would just say, that's something that's out there. It's an offering. And if you reach out to myself or a Presidio counterpart, we can kind of connect those dots with who that would be. Okay, Presidio and Rubrik, a strategic partner of ours. We already got the tremendous demo just a few minutes ago from Stacy and understand what the solution is. Presidio is an elite partner of Rubrik. So what does that mean? It means that engineers you can expect to be able to architect and size the solution. They can map it to solve your business problems, and you should expect the biggest discount, right? Because we have that elite partnership. So you can consume this technology at the lowest price, which is always important as well. And you should expect the same from your AWS partner, right? So we're an AWS premier consulting partner. So again, I talked about our cloud shops. That's something, that we're retooling for. We're also bringing in cloud native engineers. I've seen these conversations just gain a ton of momentum lately. And one topic under the quick facts on the right that I'd like to call out, I'm having a lot of different conversations around VMC on AWS. That's a VMware cloud on AWS. Often I see that in a couple different capacities. Well, one can simply be a stepping stone to cloud because you're going to keep that native format, VMware format, and kind of gives you that hybrid cloud ability and portability, but very quickly. So I'm seeing clients adopt that, kind of dip their toe in that service. Another use case can be disaster recovery there. And it's something Presidio has the ability to deliver and is a true differentiator for us. Okay, I'm going to jump into a few acronyms here. So this is a unique Presidio offering. So PRISM stands for Proactive Recapture into Savings Management. So that is a FinOps play that Presidio offers. It's really all around driving down cloud spend within AWS. So frequently we have clients come to us and say, look, our cloud spend is ballooning. We want a way to kind of get a hold of this and find optimizations where we can. So what Presidio does, this is a no-cost offering. We'll simply drop in Cloud Health, which is an analyzation tool, non-disruptive and free to the client. We'll understand what you're doing in the cloud, what services you're consuming, and are you optimally consuming those services. We're going to hone in particular on EC2, RDS, and Redshift. Those are the three where we can see the most savings immediately. So that is a service I'd encourage you again to reach out to your Presidio account manager and start those conversations immediately. You can see under the quick facts, over $1 billion in managed AWS spend. And that's just tremendously impactful. 120 plus clients. So we're seeing a lot of success there. And I'll just reference that back to, you should expect some more from your partner. If your partner's not bringing these ideas to you and you're in the cloud, I'd say there are partners out there that are willing to have these conversations. And they should be bringing them up to you, I would say clients should be saying, hey, here's ways where we can drive down spend in the cloud, on-premise and in the cloud. Okay, the next acronym I'm going to throw at you here is the Certified Private Partner Offer, CPPO. Okay, so this particular partner is this particular program, a couple things I want to call out here. It's kind of it's an easy button to consume software services solutions through the AWS marketplace. So if you have a cloud footprint, you consume native and ISV services through the marketplace. You really should understand this program. This is, like I said, it's basically the easy button, and Presidio is the largest provider of this. I would jump down to that bullet number 3, and this program becomes particularly impactful when you have an enterprise discount program, an EDP, because what can happen here is if you can drive down your EDP consumption spend by running solutions and services through the CPPO program that the organization was going to buy anyway. So there's tremendous efficiencies with consuming software and services through this and driving down that EDP spend. I've seen this in practice with a few of our clients, and immediate benefits were recognized. And it's honestly a true differentiator with how Presidio is coming to market with this. Another differentiator we throw out there is, you see Cisco mentioned in there. Presidio is the only partner currently that can execute a Cisco EA through this program. And if you're familiar with Cisco EAs, they're typically larger dollar items, and 50% of that number can be applied towards your EDP drawdown. Just tremendous value there. There is, and this is where I'd like to just point you to the PDFs with the different handout sections, so you can download some of those and learn some more about this. Again, reach out to myself or Presidio account manager, and we can go much deeper on this. All right, moving kind of quickly here, but the last slide I really have is around a case study. And again, I wanted to just talk about how AWS, Rubrik, and Presidio solving very difficult customer challenges. This one's in the healthcare space, and really the challenge that was brought to us is the board had a mandate to get all of their data, which is over a petabyte of data, off-site for cyber insurance reasons. And I think some of you out there, this might resonate directly with, right? Because cyber insurance is a huge driver towards data protection and cloud strategies right now. They are mandating an off-site copy, off-network specifically, copy of your data to meet compliance and be able to be insurable, basically. So, this is a client Presidio was close with, and we were already having data protection modernization strategies, actually just infrastructure modernization strategies and cloud journey conversations as well. So when this mandate came down, we already were involved with the client, and it just was a perfect segue into solving this problem with Rubrik and AWS. So what do we do? There's two aspects here. We really broke this into a conversation. How are we going to move the data? With what technology and strategy? And then where are we going to move the data? Well, after evaluating several different point solutions, we realized that the Rubrik Cloud Direct Archive was the best way to port this data, and getting it off network to a mutable cloud storage target. This kind of dovetails with what Tom was talking about there with the S3 conversation. So we had Rubrik ingest all of the data and then immediately archive it to S3. We enacted lifecycle policies to drive down the cost. We talked about the various tiers within S3, and we really talked about multi-region architecture at that point as well. There's just a lot of different really cool strategies on how to remain resilient and highly available in the cloud. Ultimately, the problem was solved, and I'm particularly proud of the time duration. So the board really threw a tough challenge at us. It needs to be off-site over a petabyte of data in 30 days. So we were able to solve that problem through a combination of both, as I said, Rubrik and AWS. I'd be remiss if I don't mention the AWS Direct Connect, because network is such a huge part of this conversation. How are you going to move that amount of data if you don't have sufficient bandwidth? So Presidio led the design and architecture of the Direct Connect, the S3 and the Rubrik piece, and worked closely with those vendors as well. And I'm happy to say, we solved this challenge and are still a strategic partner for this healthcare client. All right. That's all I have for now. I welcome any questions and appreciate the time.
Yeah, super. And I'll bring everybody back up on screen here for the Q&A portion. But yeah, that was great. Tom, you walked us through the some of the challenges in the AWS infrastructure for combating risk. Stacy talked about the Rubrik solutions with a great demo, and Mike brought it together with how Presidio brings it all together, and a customer story there too. We do have some questions here, and this first one, Tom, you answered this in the chat, but I wonder if we can address it here as well. A question from Lynn. Wondering how to handle integration complexity. AWS Cloud Platform offers a wide range of services, and configuring, managing these services requires expertise and experience. This complexity can lead to misconfigurations and vulnerabilities that can compromise security. Tom, any thoughts, or I wonder if you can kind of recap what you said there in the chat as well?
Yes, and just regarding complexity in general in cloud, looking at AWS, there's over 200 services, right? So what we're focusing on today is modernizing data protection, and specifically the S3 object storage service. So I don't want to get into the 200 other plus services, but instead just focusing on the tight engineering integration that we have with Rubrik to make for seamless usage of the features that we discussed today. Things like multiple classes of S3 and Glacier, the intelligent tiering between those classes, object lock, which is really the key to protecting your data against ransomware with immutable storage. And this is really that integration that we've got. It's one of the reasons that why backups are one of the first workloads that customers migrate to the cloud. It's because it's simple. It doesn't require cloud expertise to take advantage of the benefits of reduced cost, scale, and security. We've done all the integration work for you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and just want to give Stacy and Mike any thoughts on that as well, just as far as the complexity and sort of getting that under control.
That's a challenge we deal with every day and all day. This is an issue where I would say clients need consulting help, and but we're seeing that and solving those problems. I'd say the question is a little broad, so understanding specific. Yeah, I think Tom kind of addressed that. Understanding the specific complexity, then we can get laser focused on how to solve that problem. So if there's a follow-up, I'm welcome to address that.
And I think it does take all of us. It takes the consulting on your side, and on our side, on the Rubrik side, we always want to make sure that whatever the thought process is and whatever the architecture need is, that we can do that and simplify it. So if a lot of environments have many different accounts, they have many different types of assets, being able to put it into one console, single pane of glass, gives us that ability to simplify.
Yeah, and Stacy, maybe I'll stay with you for that next question, asking how does Rubrik help with simplified management, which kind of goes to the point that you were just making there. But anything more you can say about that?
I would follow it through with the simplified management. One is, again, security being the focus. So no usernames, passwords outside of once we authenticate. No keys that have to continue to be rotated. We will do that with token-based. Having everything in one view, being able to manage and look at your vulnerabilities in one site. Not have to do any updates or any pieces like that. What we wanted to do is be able to say, okay, how often do you want a backup? And how long do you want to keep it, and let the rest happen in the background? That's the Rubrik magic.
Okay.
All right, I think I could add something to that too. From a Presidio perspective, Presidio being a partner of, the 8 or 10 leading vendors in the data protection space, by far, Rubrik is the simplest platform to implement and manage. It really is tremendously simple with the SLA domains that Stacy showed there. The learning the learning queue there is so short that often training isn't required with Rubrik. A client will ask, "Hey, do I have any training blocks to include with this particular quote?" No, it's simply we'll implement it. We'll do some over the shoulder training while we stand it up, and you'll be off to the races. And that's a lot different than the other platforms that are out there in the industry.
Okay, super. Thanks. This next question is for Tom. That they're asking, how much does Amazon S3 cost? You showed that one slide with all the storage options. I imagine there's a range there, but I wonder if you can offer some sort of ballpark figures there.
It's a classic, it depends. So with Amazon S3, you only pay for what you use. There is no minimum charge. And then we actually have a really good pricing calculator that you can go out and use. So you can spread it across those 7 tiers of Amazon S3 storage and determine what that's going to cost. And again, it's going to depend upon the value of the data to the business. So something that you need instant access to, it's going to be a higher cost than something that's going to be, deep archive, for instance. So it really depends on what the value of the data is to the business, and you're going through and determining, okay, 10% of my business is going to be in this tier, 10% is going to be here, and just kind of spreading that out over those 7 S3 buckets or tiers of service. But again, there is an AWS pricing calculator and an Amazon S3 pricing page that gives you all the details of the breakdowns for the different tiers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. This next question is for Stacy, and they're asking, how does Rubrik help with moving on-premises workloads to the cloud?
It's interesting. I worked with a customer here in the Northwest that, for instance, had a very large Oracle database, and they wanted to be able to do some Q&A in the cloud and also create a DR in case of. So with us, as we were able to bring that data up from on-premise into AWS, and then we were able to then spin up the Oracle immediately. It went from, and I'm talking about a database that took 12 hours to restore, 12 to 15 hours to restore on-prem. When we brought it up to the cloud, it was less than 8 hours. This was over a 15 terabyte Oracle database. So one is, it can be migration as in you're moving workloads over, and we can help spin that up and help with the conversion. It can also be, we bring it up as a backup or an archive, and we can spin that up for your QA or your dev teams also, or a DR in emergencies. So once we have it up there, we can do lots of different things with it.
Okay, excellent. Good time for a couple more here.
Has there been any instances of cloud accounts being compromised? I'm thinking just from a cloud account perspective, I could see something being compromised as any account would if you've shared your password with somebody and they logged into it. As far as anyone being able to hack in and gain access to an account, I am not aware of that. But account passwords and vulnerabilities are the same challenges that you face in any data environment.
And on the Rubrik side,
Yeah, I'd say that speaks to.
I was just going to say on the Rubrik side, all of our work, and I didn't show it when I logged in because I didn't log in, I already was in, is we're a 2-factor authentication. So you have your username, password. If that gets compromised, hopefully your phone doesn't get compromised, or however else you do your 2-factor. We have found bad actors come into an account. So we have that ability, as we said, that's the idea. You can cross account replicate, and that could also help you with the security.
Okay, excellent. So that's probably about where we're going to need to leave it. But I did just want to give everybody an opportunity to let the audience know just about next steps, if people are interested in doing more with these solutions. So maybe I'll turn it to Tom first, and I'll put up that next step slide. What are we looking at here? What do you recommend for people to get started?
So this really kind of goes back again to the complexity or integration question. There's lots of AWS training that is available out there specifically for S3. There's some really simple getting started courses that you could take. Basics around just managing data, securing and protecting that data in S3 that'll kind of go through the high level features and capabilities that we discussed today. And then if it does get to a point to where you're running into challenges, we've got lots of people that are willing to help. General support services. There's a repost service that you can actually leverage other AWS users within the environment. And then, of course, there's professional services and Presidio that can help you through any of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. And Stacy, what about next steps with Rubrik?
Well, we work side by side with Presidio. At this point, if there's an interest, connect with your Presidio teams. And we are here to do any kind of deeper dive demo. We're here to go through any concerns, walk through the security, any of those pieces. It's wonderful when we work side by side with people like Mike.
And Mike, last but not least, if somebody does want to get started with you guys, what do you recommend?
Feel free to reach out to myself. Obviously, you can use these links that are shared on the screen to contact Presidio. I would just bring it back to the fact that you should expect more from your partner. Your partner should be bringing relevant ideas and strategies to modernize and save you money. If that's not the case, there is a better way.
All right. Well, Tom, Stacy, Mike, thank you all for a great discussion today, and for all your insights here in the Q&A as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. And we do have one last piece of business. It is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that card today is Michael Schnabel from Texas. So congratulations to Michael. We'll be in touch with details about getting your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Rubrik, Amazon Web Services, and Presidio for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.